Welcome. I'm Robert Burke, Libertarian candidate for governor of Wisconsin. In kindergarten, I learned two very important lessons. First, don't aggress against peaceful people or take their stuff. And second, don't lie to people. Now, this is the moral basis and libertarian philosophy of government, and is the basis of my plan for economic reform. I want to thank you for the chance, by the way, to explain my position and how I see Wisconsin moving forward. First, unlike the red and blue team, I won't lie to you about our economic situation here in America and Wisconsin. Our $18 trillion U.S. deficit and money printing is causing massive inflation within our economy and devastating our poor and eroding our middle class. What we are currently experiencing is called stagflation, identifiable by rising prices, which you see at the grocery store, and stagnant or falling wages, which we see with more people working part-time than ever before. Stagflation occurs as the consumer runs out of discretionary income, which is the money for things other than food, energy, and shelter. It is this erosion of purchasing power of the consumer that makes our poor poorer and the middle class purchasing power shrink away. We are reaching very quickly the end of our fiat-based monetary system. It may be 1 year or 2 years or even 5, but eventually the dollar will collapse and Wisconsin and America will once again fall into depression, as it did in 1929. It is in that vacuum which I hope Wisconsin will choose to heed my message that forward is in the other direction. Step 1, reestablish property rights and clear malinvestment. You know, during the crash of 2008, many people lost their homes. Now, Wall Street received trillions of dollars in bailouts, while Main Street, all across Wisconsin, died on the vine. I believe the nature of the system and the crash should have made it self-evident that major banking and financial reforms were necessary to prevent another collapse. This single reason is why I intend to work with our Attorney General to ensure that the property owners retain their property and that the bankers take the losses that they should have taken back in 2008. Now, as we look around Wisconsin, there is a second property issue occurring with eminent domain, as well as pollution due to things such as frac sand mining. We intend to strengthen the personal property laws to allow property owners the chance to defend the quality of life on their property, and especially if they're poor, by implementing a loser pays option with judicial discretion. You see, the state's job is the protection of personal property. Step 2 is tax reform. One of our first actions should be to eliminate the property tax. The property tax is one of the most regressive taxes, meaning that it hits the poor much harder than the wealthy. In particular, if we learned anything in this inflationary housing bubble market, increasing housing prices create increasing property tax bills. There is nothing in this paradigm about that which helps our poor and especially our elderly on fixed income. The elderly of Wisconsin should not have to sell their paid-off, lifelong homes due to an unaffordable property tax bill. But that is one of the negative consequences of a property tax. It is not the job of the state to do anything but to protect that personal property from harm. Therefore, there should never be a law that allows the local communities or state to confiscate personal property or to raise a tax bill arbitrarily on our poor and elderly, as this tax does. The second part of tax reform is to eliminate the income tax. Much like the property tax, the income tax is a fraud designed to cloud the general public's understanding of exactly who pays this tax. The income tax is paid by the consumer and it is paid at the register on every product that you purchase. Without the consumer, none of the 1%'s taxes would get paid. You see, when you consider that doctors and lawyers and engineers are many of our top compensated professionals, it means that the consumer pays the highest tax on the most critical infrastructure. If you want to help our poor and middle class afford health care, then repeal the cost of this tax from their bill. Our proposal is for a two-tier sales tax system. It's called the fair tax, and there's a lot of information on the internet about it. Tier 1 would include food, energy, housing, and we would include clothing. These are basic needs in Maslow's hierarchy, and the things that are used most by the general public. They should be taxed at the lowest level. The second tier taxation would be one set tax level on all other general consumer goods within the economy of Wisconsin. It's time for government to stop wasting our tax code as a manipulation of social behavior. Eliminating these two taxes and replacing them with a sales tax will also result in the wealthy paying a larger portion of taxes, and they'll do so voluntarily. Someone who is poor goes, for example, to the store and buys a generic bottle of mustard. They will pay a 10% tax or 10 cents on that purchase. A wealthy individual will go to the store and buy the name brand mustard or a bottle of Grey Poupon. That $4 purchase will result in a 40-cent tax voluntarily levied on that wealthy person. And this dynamic occurs all the way up the economic system. When the poor buy a car, they buy a used 2003 Chevy Impala. The wealthy buy a brand new Mercedes every 2 years. Again, if we tax people fairly, they will tax themselves at a higher rate voluntarily. These changes to our tax system will encourage innovators and entrepreneurs to bring their companies and developing products to our state. You see, there are 3 input costs to any given product. There are the labor costs, there are the raw material costs, and then there are the governmental costs of tax and regulation. By eliminating as much of the government tax cost and regulatory costs that are inputted into the products manufactured in Wisconsin will have a natural advantage in the marketplace and be far more competitive, not only across America, but across the world. This in turn will generate the prosperity that brings new entrepreneurs and manufacturing back to our state, and will also result in a smaller government. With a fraction of the policing points, it will lead to a far more efficient taxing agency. Remember, all the time spent complying with filing taxes is unproductive capital that could otherwise be used in research, development, new products, and employee compensation. Step 3, hemp nullification. Industrial hemp was grown in the state of Wisconsin until well into the 1950s. Beginning in 1937, however, hemp was under attack by the federal government and was eventually banned. First, hemp is not marijuana and does not contain any of the psychoactive ingredients of THC. Think of hemp more like cotton, although far more versatile. Now, history is very clear that it was made illegal because it competed with cotton, the oil companies, and a variety of other industries. Regulation is often a tool used by wealthy corporations in order to marginalize and eliminate competition. At its heyday, hemp was one of the top cash crops in the state of Wisconsin. And indeed, we have the soil and environment that makes Wisconsin a perfect match for this crop. Now, one of its principal uses is in the making of paper. And Wisconsin has seen its paper mill industry decimated over the last decade. Indeed, each plant closing is an economic bomb, such as the paper mill in Brokaw, Wisconsin, which shut down at the end of 2012, laying off some 400 workers. In turn, this has left a $4.5 million budget hole in Brokaw and exacerbated the budget shortfalls in other communities around the area, such as Wausau, who has a $750,000 budget shortfall in 2014. Again, in part because of the economic bomb of a paper plant closing and the ripple effect of those job losses. A number of other states are beginning to nullify the hemp laws, such as Oregon and Tennessee. And if Wisconsin does not get in the game early, entrepreneurs and innovators will choose to begin developing new products and new jobs in other states. Wisconsin is a diverse state with the potential to be a global player in manufacturing, agriculture, and tourism. Our well-educated population and Midwest values makes us a great place to not only live and work, but play. But in today's global market, we need to be ready to act in ways that give us a competitive edge. This is my vision for Wisconsin. I'm Robert Burke, Libertarian, and I believe that forward is in the other direction. Please vote for me November 4th and visit robertburkeforgovernor.org. Peace.